Welcome to Not About You, Season 2. If this is the first time you've listened to Not About You, thanks for listening. There's an entire first season of shows that I hope you'll check out. Each episode of this show features a guest discussing some aspect of their own identity, their own lived experiences, that they'd maybe like to stop having to explain all the time. I'm your host, Levi Weinhagen, and just as in Season 1, I'm a white, straight, hetero, cisgendered man trying to grow in my understanding of lived experiences other than my own. I also still love making jokes, and I'm kind of an idiot, so I'm very open to feedback. Find me online or hit me with an email, napod@gmail.com. This episode features my conversation with Carin Mrotz and was recorded in late February 2017. This is Not About You.
I'm Carin Mrotz, and I work in Jewish social justice, and I identify as a funny lady.
I like that a lot.
It kind of sets an expectation that now I'm kind of worried about fulfilling.
No, yeah. I mean...
Now let's talk about serious stuff.
Set yourself up to fail.
Yeah.
I know you a bit,
yeah.
And I think serious stuff is the funniest stuff, and I believe that's sort of your frame as well.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, you are funny because you are intentionally walking into unpleasantness.
Intentionally walking into unpleasantness, and sometimes we make things funny because it makes us more able to process what is causing real panic in our bodies.
I see the work you do as a leader in your community in a multitude of ways, of various communities, and then a leader of sort of larger, like you are a big voice in activism and justice.
Thank you. That's very flattering.
And,
you have a very big voice.
You have a big... I prefer flattering to condescending. So,
yeah.
My daughter's teacher describes a thing of saying, she's really in her glory with my daughter, who is also like a presence in a room. So I see you in your glory when you're representing people who are underrepresented. So I am curious about how you got to be that way. Why do you do that work? And then I want to, from there, get into sort of what is a central issue that you're kind of facing, or that's sort of a central question that you've got a reaction to.
Okay, so I would say that I've always been really interested in social justice. I mean, I grew up the child of public school teachers who were really involved in the union, and we were really involved in presidential races even when I was a kid. And, I went to high school and college and became a punk, and a kid who didn't fit in, and a kid who became an activist. I don't know that I overtly connected that to Judaism or my Jewishness until, honestly, I started doing the work that I do. I wanted to work in social justice professionally, and I was looking at organizations that I thought would be a fit for me, and I ended up working for a Jewish social justice organization. And I think it really... I read something a long time ago. Have you ever read Ken Wilber, A Brief History of Everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he says that you never become something new. Just a wall falls away and you become more aware of things that were already inside you. And I think that real connections began to form for me between my understanding of my Jewishness and my community's backstory and my drive to do work for social justice. And so I do specifically work, and now it's really clear for me, I think. I grew up in South Florida in a Jewish community where I don't feel like I really fit. We were a family that didn't have money in a very wealthy community. And we were, and we knew it. We knew that we didn't fit in that way. And I do think that there's some of that drives me to do justice work within my community, to take a community where I saw a lot of inequities just even within my community, and to work within my community to not just... I don't just want to bring Jews to be a powerful voice for racial and economic justice. I want Jews to transform our own community for racial and economic justice within.
That feels like a great sort of one-to-one metaphor for the idea that you can't really help be a part of racial, economic justice, fighting oppression, until you've figured out your own internal oppressions and your own programming. Like you can't really help another... Like you have to put your own oxygen mask on before you can help others.
Yeah, it's true. It also just speaks to, what I understand about that you work in your own community.
In the area of Jewishness.
Yes.
I was talking to you about what is an area that you would have something to say when it comes to identity and social justice? And you kind of hit on something that I think was, there were some big news articles, like with this weird framing question. And so I'd love to just get a little something from you on I think it was The Atlantic magazine who had the actual headline on their magazine that said, "Are Jews white?"
Are Jews white? Right. That's a funny question. Right?
Yeah. Right.
And there's actually, there's a book, and I don't want to I actually wrote her down because I did. Brodkin, a woman, wrote a book in 1998 which was called "How Jews Became White." Since that moment, we have been.
Since that book came out?
I don't know why anybody's asking this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so are Jews white? And that's we had talked about this a while ago when you were saying, like, what's a question that you get asked all the time? Do you want me to answer it?
Yeah, if you have an answer, yeah.
So I am.
Yeah.
This one
Wait, are you not all Jews?
What? I'm not the official spokesperson for all of the Jews in this room. I'm the official.
In the room, for sure.
I am actually the official spokesperson for all of the Jews in the room. So the answer is that some Jews are white. Right? Some Jews are white, like all Jews are not literally white. There are, Jews around the world. There are Mizrahi Jews and Sephardi Jews and Jews in multiple countries that do not identify as white people at all. And 10% of American Jews are literally not white. I think that what we think of when we, and not just what we think of, but what you see when you see the typical representation of American Jew looks something like me. So, like, dark curly hair and, like, big features, and I'm talking with my hands right now.
True.
I am. I'm like the nanny, but I don't clean.
Which I think might be like the nanny.
Right, yeah. Also, I'm not that good with my own children. So I think that there's, like, this Ashkenazi, like, this Eastern European typical ideal that we have when we think about the American Jewish community. And I think, like, are Jews white? It depends on who's asking. Does David Duke think Jews are white? That's a potentially different answer than what my mother would tell you. My mother would be like, "Oh, I'm a white Jewish lady," I think the question that is more often being asked when we ask, "Are Jews white?" is about the ways that Jewishness either conveys or mitigates whiteness, right? Like how whiteness either comes with the Jewish identity or is in fact mitigated by a Jewish identity.
Ooh, can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. So was there a lot in there?
Yeah, well, I think, because what I'm really curious about is what that question does. I'm not even, the answer to that question I think is interesting, but what I find compelling is,
why are you asking
why is that
question?
being asked, and what is the fact that someone is asking that and writing stories about that question? What does that say about the way the United States thinks about race and culture and ethnicity?
Right.
How Jews as a people are viewed?
Yeah.
Both as a sort of a monochromatic people, which doesn't seem right, but also... And I think Jewish identity can say a lot about the idea of whiteness. And obviously it was manufactured for reasons about control, both controlling people who are not fit into whiteness and also controlling those of us who do fit into whiteness. It's all this sort of bigger white supremacy thing. So that's what I'm curious about. And so when you're saying that sort of the mitigating, I would love to hear you talk about what that question does.
So who's asking and why are they asking? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Why are they asking?
Why are you asking? But I think people ask for different reasons. I know that, I think sometimes people ask out of genuine curiosity. I think that sometimes people ask because they are definitely trying to set us as an other for one reason or another. I feel like there's a reason to say, are Jews, it's not just are Jews white, but more recently there have been questions, are Jews people? Do
you want to answer that question?
We walk and talk. We aerobicize. Not me personally. Are we people? I think that sometimes it is a way of pulling us out as the other. I will say that sometimes Jews do that, though, too. I think that Jews sometimes think of ourselves as not normal white people. And sometimes that's like a really real response to anti-Semitism and feeling othered and this knowledge that no matter how hard we've tried to assimilate, we're still not really making it, I think some of that is a real response. And then I think sometimes Jews hang on to non-whiteness as a way of finding common ground with other oppressed people. I think everybody wants to find common ground with other people, right? You know, like that's a really human desire to see somebody and say, I know how you're feeling. And so I do think that sometimes not that we use it, but that we lean too heavily on either historic oppression or we lean too heavily on a not normal white person identity as a way of connecting with other people, which I think shortcuts building real deep relationships, which I think is challenging.
Is that because it denies the
denies
the difference of lived experience?
Yeah. And so I think there's a real reason we go there, and I think that sometimes going there as our first stop can limit the relationships that we need to build. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess my question is always when you pose the question, are Jews white? What do you mean by white?
Well, that is,
because we can establish that like whiteness is both a construct but also like a real thing that comes with stuff. Right.
It's like the lines on the road. Those aren't actual walls. They're going to keep cars from hitting each other. But they're really important.
Yes, I mean they do, exactly. Like it's not a real wall, but it sure keeps you on your side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I feel like that is one of the goals of whiteness.
Yes, to keep you on your side.
Yeah, like both overt and subvert.
Yes.
Goal is to create sides and then push people around in and out of them. It's a form of redistricting.
It's gerrymandering. Yeah. that never works either.
No.
Wow.
What is your current relationship, like you personally as a person, to that whiteness idea?
I think I am really both very aware of the ways in which I benefit from it. I mean, like when I think that's what I'm saying. Like, what do you mean by white? So, do you mean that we have proportionate representation in colleges and universities and in different careers? And do we have high levels of home ownership? And, am I being profiled by the police when I go out of my house? Like, all of those things are things that are conveyed by whiteness, right? And I certainly benefit from those things. I think I'm also very aware of the ways that whiteness hurts literally every person. And I talk about this with my community all the time, is that we can't fight white supremacy because it's bad for other people. We have to fight white supremacy because it's bad for literally everyone, even for people who feel like they're benefiting from it. Right.
Yeah, I wonder if you can say a little more about that, because I'm past the being bummed at myself for only really understanding that in the last few years, because that is a waste of my energy, just feeling bad of not knowing that. But that idea that I am also the victim of white supremacy, which does not deny my role in it, but it is important to understand. I wonder if you can help people who have no real understanding of that.
Yeah, well, and I think me too. I mean, I think that for years I've done trainings with the Jewish community around, done anti-racism training, and we've really framed a lot of stuff about, we've used the book, How Jews Became White. We talk really extensively about white privilege and needing to understand our white privilege. I think we have given people the false impression that being white is good for you, right? Which, like we've already said, in many ways is. But I think we've also given people the false impression that whiteness has been good for some people. And so I think that we have a lot of work to do. I have a lot of work to do to reframe these conversations to connect more to what I was saying about the ways that whiteness hurts all of us. I mean, well, I can tell you generally, and then I can tell you how it hurts my community.
That would be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and this might sound like woo-woo or like, hippy-dippy or like...
Are you going to talk about rune stones?
No, trust me, I am like the least hippie, crunchy lefty that you will find. I don't do yoga, I eat like junk food. But I honestly think that everyone's lives are just better when we have different kinds of people in them. I think that spending time only with people who are exactly like you is sad and boring. And so in just a very basic way, without talking about capitalism, without talking about, what racism has done to public education or social services in this country, without even doing a deep dive into the ways that racism has underpinned some of the really more restrictive anti-civil rights policies of the last several decades. Without even going there, I will just say that keeping people out of relationship with one another is one of the key things that I think whiteness does that hurts all of us.
It feels really reductive, but a while back we had the Day Without Immigrants.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think that intentionally did that was pretty stark was say, hey, your favorite restaurants are all closed right now.
Yes.
That's what happens when you are monoculture. You have boring taste buds. And I think that is a tiny snapshot of this bigger idea.
Yeah. Well, this is the Jew episode, so it's all going to be about food.
That's what I was hoping
We're just going to sit and talk
You've
about
already established you don't ever exercise or really move at all. And you just want to eat. So let's just get into that.
They tried to kill us, let's eat. That's like every Jewish holiday, right? They tried to kill us, we survived, now we eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite things, and then one of my favorite terrible jokes is the food is terrible in such small portions.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes. But that's right, and that's one of the saddest things about Jewish culture is that it's so food-based, yet we don't have that many really great food.
I mean, matzo ball soup.
Matzo ball soup.
I will put up against many a thing.
I will say noodle kugel is bomb.
Yeah. I wonder if we can talk a little bit about the current climate. Anti-Semitism is like a hot topic.
I'm so torn on this because on one hand, it's really scary, but on the other hand, I like attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're blowing up.
Yeah, is that cool? You're trending right now?
We're trending. We're trending.
I wonder if you have any insights about why. There has been a years, I feel there's been a years of denial. I mean, aside from just the gross denial of Holocaust thing, which was viewed as an outlier.
So fun fact, that's not actually the first time Jews were oppressed or killed.
Right.
Right.
Because it's from the beginning,
yes,
right? That, they were the first oppressed folks, or not the first. I mean, that's probably going to be offensive to a bunch of people, but I feel like the legacy of Judaism is the legacy of oppression. But tell me if that's not true.
I think it's interesting. I think that from my perspective, it's the legacy of resisting oppression.
Well, yes, okay.
It's the legacy of
way to take the power back.
Well, I mean, I'm still sitting here, right?
Yes.
And when we
Which people find infuriating.
I know, some people do. Oh, shut your Jew mouth.
Is that the new show you're going to
make? That's going to be my podcast, yeah. No, I mean, and I have a whole phone full of screenshots of people on Twitter who find it infuriating that I'm sitting here right now.
Right.
Certainly, I think that, why is anti-Semitism such a big thing? I mean, it's been there this whole time.
Well, that's what I'm curious about. It's sort of become undeniable for now, but why has it been so easy to deny?
Why has it been so easy? I mean...
Why can I ignore you so easily?
Why can you ignore me so easily? Well, because we've had a contract, we were talking about this a little bit before, about the contract of assimilation, whether you call it assimilation or you call it becoming white, right? There's this whole story about Jews becoming white, and what it's really about is about assimilation. It's about taking on the dominant culture and making this agreement, which is we're going to give up these things that make us different in exchange for safety amongst you within your culture. And sometimes, Jews get compared to the Irish or the Italians, in terms of coming to America. I will say those are countries, and Jewish is something different.
Right.
And Jews have learned at various points in history, in the early 1930s in Germany, German Jews thought of themselves as Germans first and Jews second, and that did not work out so well. And
someone else disagreed.
Somebody else
disagreed. And they got power.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I have a book you should read.
Right. Maybe I have Twitter mentions.
Yeah.
And so I think that we have not necessarily successfully assimilated to the level that perhaps other European cultures did. I think partly because we're not Christian. I think a lot of the social and cultural ways that people interact with each other and fit in with each other have to do with being Christian and Christian hegemony and the way that there are these assumptions that you make. And Jews just can't fit into that, even when we're trying. Even when I was growing up, my uncle always had a Christmas tree. And I was so confused by that because I was like, how is Uncle Bob not Jewish? Aren't we all Jewish? Mm. And so there are families that assimilated, but you can't assimilate fully when you're not Christian. I think the other reason that it didn't really work and we haven't assimilated as successfully as other cultures is because anti-Semitism has actually existed this entire time. And to be fair, we could have worked harder to be exactly like everybody else.
Look at you. I'm going to take a little bit of responsibility.
To be fair, we have our stuff, and in many ways, Jewish culture has invaded American culture. There's a lot of writing about how much of American humor is Jewish. There was actually a great story written, it was almost exactly this time last year, about how Al Jaffe and Mad Magazine made Jewish humor American humor. Mm. And so there's been some give and take, but I don't feel like we've ever fully shed the thing that makes us different.
So my sort of heritage is Scottish, Irish, English.
Were you Jewish for a short period of time?
I was fake Jewish.
Okay.
I was hoping you would throw that upon me.
It's one of my favorite things about you.
It's connected to comedy.
Yes.
In 7th grade, I kind of unintentionally. I just adopted a bunch of Jewish affectations. My understanding is based on readings and comedy albums.
Because you were like, those
have
Jews
the jokes.
Those Jews have it good.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is, and some of it, looking back now, I can see, like, I didn't have an understanding of personal family culture. Like,
Right.
I was just an American person. I didn't know anything about, like, my family came on a boat from Germany, and we're all Scottish and Irish, and we have all this British DNA. I didn't know all that stuff. So I was like looking for a culture, and I was like, well, I love Lenny Bruce and Woody Allen, and I like the way Jews make bread and noodles. So I guess I'll do this, and I convinced a teacher, and we celebrated Hanukkah because of me.
That's fantastic. You brought culture to your school.
Sadly, I did.
Were you the only Jew in your class?
Yeah, in my school.
That's amazing.
And I was not one. But my name's Levi. It's an easy lift.
It is.
Levi Weinegg. I have like this German Jewish name.
Totally.
And I was like literally like throwing in Yiddish phrases. But any Jew would have been like, what are you doing? This is camp. Like I was doing campy nonsense.
Yeah, it's fine. It pays the bills.
But I feel like one of the reasons a lot of like my people fully assimilated is they were like, we'll give up everything as long as we can have some farmland and less persecution.
Yeah.
And I get that, but I also like, that's sort of a bummer too. I have to go do research and find those ties. Like I don't have a rich oral history of people talking about in my family where we came from and what happened.
That's how whiteness is bad for you.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because in order to be white, you have to give up all of your culture and everything interesting, right?
Yeah. So Jews were like writ large not willing to do that?
Well, it's not,
some people have tried, right?
Some people have tried.
Because some people won't let you either.
Right. So that's the thing, is that some people won't let you. That's the thing, is that like it's an agreement that we're going to give this stuff up and we want to feel safe.
Yeah.
I think that for Jews, especially around the middle part of the last century, when you see a big uptick in assimilation, there's almost a desperation for safety, right? We just want to fit in. We just want to be safe. We don't want stuff to happen to us here in America. I don't know that has the foundation that you need in order to really fully pull off the assimilation. Like just badly needing to feel safe doesn't necessarily drive the most thoughtful shedding of all of your culture.
Right, then you're Patty Hearst or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I also think that like some of the things that make our traditions and our culture so rich are literally about not giving up who we are. We make much of the fact that Hanukkah is not our big holiday. It's only a big deal because it's at the same time as Christmas, and you guys made your holiday super commercial, so we had to also, so our kids don't feel left out.
Yeah.
But like Hanukkah is literally a holiday about not being willing to give up Jewish ritual and practice. So much of our story is about refusing to stop being Jews, that how do you pull that out of your DNA?
And you probably shouldn't.
I wouldn't.
Because that, I think you get, like, I don't have a religious practice now. I like to say I'm a non-aggressive a-hole atheist. Like, I don't need to yell at anybody. I've come to the realization that everyone isn't idiots just because I think differently than them.
Yeah.
Which is not a place that a lot of atheists I know have gotten to. But you can be culturally Jewish and you're still not allowed to just be fully assimilated, which is different than a lot of other cultures. And you spoke to that sort of, I have a Christianity genetic code almost. And I don't know what that is. Like, is it just because you've been fighting anti-Semitism from the beginning?
I don't understand. Like,
well, this idea, I don't know. There's still some uncrackable piece of why an individual Jewish person can't just fully assimilate and be allowed. If they don't do any Jewish practices, they still get this thing. Like, there's still going to be someone who's like, you can't be in this room. You're a Jew,
right? Because anti-Semitism still exists.
Yeah.
Yes, there are still anti-Semites. I think that part of the why can't, even if you're not and just for the record, atheism is pretty compatible with Judaism.
Yeah.
We believe
that's why it's a good fit for me.
Yeah, we believe in up to one God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you love to like question everything.
Yes, that's
my favorite
that's
thing.
Literally our thing, right? Like,
that's not a Christian practice.
No, I host a big Passover Seder every year, and it's literally a rule that the Seder does not end if nobody has any questions. And like we have the saying, like, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, right? So you're like, why, even if you're like a cultural non-practicing Jew, why do you still not? I think part of that is about how invisible Christian hegemony is to people who are in it. The most very basic, simple things like inviting me to a meeting on a day that's a really like a serious Jewish holiday. You're like, oh, it's just a Tuesday, and I'm like, this is my holiest day of the year, and I live in a world where people don't know that or recognize its importance.
Right, but no one would ever have a meeting on Christmas.
There would never be a meeting on Christmas. That's been a challenge for me because I grew up in a part of the country that has a big Jewish community, where on some of our high holidays schools would just be closed because too many people, teachers and students, would be missing school, to living in Minnesota where I had a job where I was actively penalized for taking a vacation day on a Jewish holiday because it was a really busy day, and I was told nobody takes that day off. And I was like, well, I want to give you some literature about the Jews, and it was my vacation time, but it still became a problem.
That feels like a really central part of, white supremacy, but like that Christian hegemony.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think in the last few years, the progressive organizations that I am connected to have struggled with recognizing Muslim holidays and trying to understand how they should be valued and treated the same way. They have these built-in, ingrained, like, national calendar holidays. And people really have an internal headbutting around, oh, I get that is important to that person, but why does everything have to stop now? And not seeing that exact same thing has been happening from their side for generations.
Yes.
So I wonder if you have insights on why that is so internally difficult for us. It feels almost like people struggle with the shifting gender pronouns.
Yeah.
That they're like, I get it, but why do I have to? Okay, but can people just live their lives and I don't have to? It's really hard. It is literally hard to make those changes. Mm-hmm. But is it harder than the victimization that we're contributing to? There's a weird internal struggle.
Yeah.
Help us fix it.
I think
Let me burden you.
Yeah, no, I think it's two things. We have this conversation all the time because I do a lot of interfaith work, and I find that often interfaith just means a whole bunch of different types of Christians. And does not really fully include, in a meaningful way, Jews or Muslims or, wicked,
Sikhs or
Sikhs,
whatever.
Yeah. And part of that is the population of where we live.
The dominant culture.
It's the dominant culture. The organizations that organize churches have thousands of churches here in Minnesota. I've got 12 synagogues. So part of it is just that I am married to a person who grew up in southern Minnesota. I'm the first Jew he ever knew. So, and now he has Jewish children and he knows lots of us. Fixed it.
Just surrounding him.
I'm taking one white guy at a time.
It's a slow but long game.
Yeah. So I think part of it is just that it is different and unusual and not the first thing that you think of. When you hold something, when you say I want to do an interfaith program, but I'm scheduling it at a time when Jews are observing Shabbat. I don't think there's this intent to leave people out, but I think it's partly that it's like they say that racism isn't the shark, it's the water. I think that some of the Christian stuff is the water too, right? And I think it's not intentional. And I think that there is a certain amount of just insensitivity. We're all working for the same thing. We all have the cause is important. I need you to drop some of your identity stuff at the door. Sometimes progressives do that too. I think the other thing is, and this is going to veer a little bit, I do think that progressives have a little bit of a split personality about faith because we want to make sure that church and state are separate. We don't want religion in our schools. We don't want everything to be a faith frame. And I think that sometimes what that can push us to do is to make faith something that's a bit more fringe rather than something that's really core to a lot of people's identities. I don't know if I find that as much in Minnesota because Minnesota's like a faithy place. But there's actually a book called The Culture of Disbelief that came out in the 90s about how one of the things that happened during the 80s was that the left really saw the intermingling of the religious right and Ronald Reagan and church and state as being a really bad thing. And so we pushed back in the opposite direction and pushed for really, really, really strict divisions between church and state and public life and personal life and political life and faith life. And the unfortunate side effect of that is that we marginalize faith and we consider it not as important to people as it really is.
And you don't let someone...
Was that nerdy?
Yeah, it was. And I think you're hitting on I hear a lot how can I bring my whole self to this work? And that is overtly saying, you can't.
Right.
Because I'm uncomfortable.
Right. Because when you bring your whole self, sometimes it makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the point. Right?
That's where nobody's getting out of here comfortable. That's, yeah. What do we say? We say we want to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought that was just a comedy idea until I started getting into social justice
No,
practices.
that's a social justice thing.
That's the whole reason for everything.
That's the reason for
everything. Because I was
everything.
like, oh, that's what satire is.
Yeah.
But like, that's what everything is.
Yeah. Well, but even just like, I know I'm like Ken Wilber freaking right now, but in the same book, he talks about the fact that in order to get from one place to the next, like it's like if you think of life as like a ladder and you have to step off of a rung to get to the next one, in the time where you're not standing on anything, that's like profoundly disorienting.
Right.
But that, you need to be uncomfortable to move to the next thing.
But we don't think of that part of the ladder.
I do.
Let me guess, you don't go on ladders.
I think of it because I actually find that comforting, which might be weird. I find it comforting that at times, because I'm able to reframe for me that at times when I'm very uncomfortable or at times when I feel disoriented, it might be because I'm in the midst of some type of change. Rather than, oh my God, I'm freaking out, it's what does this feel like and what might be coming next?
Well, so we're talking about this discomfort thing. You're the leader of an organization. Mm-hmm. You're also a voice for the Jewish community in the Twin Cities and in Minnesota. And you're a voice for some political ideas.
Sure.
Do you feel pressure that you are supposed to do everything right because you are speaking for groups of people? And then what do you do with those feelings of, like, do you ever feel insecure?
All the time. What do
you do with that idea of I'm supposed to be a model of how to do this?
Remember the time you asked a Jew if they felt insecure?
Yeah.
That was funny. That was a good time.
No, it was intentionally stupid.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure. So I never feel like I'm speaking for all of the Jews, though. And I get, like, annoyed when people say, like I'll get emails saying, you don't speak for me. And I'm like, of course I don't, dude. Right. I'm speaking for the organization that I represent.
Because people who want, all the sides want to put you in that place.
Yeah, like, yeah.
Carin said this, and she's all the Jewish people.
Yeah, I am. I'm every Jewess. It's all in me.
I love that song.
Yeah.
Not as big of a hit.
Yeah, no. I think I feel less pressure when I do it and more immediate shame as soon as I'm done doing it. I think often when I feel called to say something, it's because my members or my community or the people in my world are asking me to. And so I feel that I'm answering that. But there's always that, like, as soon as I'm done, whether it's like saying something publicly or writing something, there's always like that, oh God, no, like people won't get it and they won't agree and then they'll be mad at me and they won't like me anymore.
There's a vulnerability.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to be liked?
That's an interesting question because probably less now at my advanced age as an adult.
You're not that old.
I mean, not as a Jewish professional. As a Jewish professional, I'm still relatively young. But I mean, I feel like if you had asked me this 10 years ago, I would have said that being liked was much, much higher on my scale of desires than it is now.
I think a lot of people who want to be active in civic engagement and justice are wrestling with the desire to be liked and the feeling that they have to be pals with everyone they do work with.
Yeah.
How did you progress past that? Was it just sitting in that not being liked space?
Yeah, just being not liked and realizing that I didn't die and that other people do like me, and that I like me. Yeah, I think just a lot of experience not being liked. Not that I'm like super unlikable, but just...
You have a charm.
No. I will say honestly, like parenting has brought me past a lot of my needing to be liked because it's like getting okay with the idea that somebody can really dislike you and you can still feel really invested in loving them and giving them the things that they need to be successful and not taking stuff personally. Like, I think it's less that I don't want to be liked and more that I just don't take it personally when I'm not liked, what am I going to do?
I want to talk about Nazis.
Yeah, you want to talk about like the uptick, right?
Yeah, well, I want to talk about the uptick, but I also want to talk about how do you not take everything personally in that space? Or do you, and then how do you get past that to just like, because you, I know, are someone who literally fights Nazis. Like you have
not
to go...
Not in like hand-to-hand combat.
But I feel like you might. You have to go paint swastikas away. You've had to do that. You've done that.
Yes,
right?
I have done that.
And that is directly fighting Nazis.
Yes, I will. This happened a few months ago, and to be very specific, we did not paint over the swastika. We used paint remover to clean off the swastika.
And you did not paint the swastika.
I did not paint the swastika.
There was some hilarious accusations on that.
Right. So this is what Levi is talking about. Is in November, the week after Thanksgiving, there was a giant swastika, but like a poorly done swastika. And so my friend friend and I cleaned off a giant swastika that was painted on a garage on an abandoned house in my neighborhood in North Minneapolis. We cleaned it off, we tweeted about it, and we were attacked by Nazis on Twitter. I say it now and I'm like, oh God, who cares what people do on Twitter? But it was really, really scary and upsetting. They had my face photoshopped into all types of memes. I mean, and really were describing the things that they wanted to do to me.
Not flattering.
No, not flattering. One said I looked like a young Howard Stern. I would disagree.
Hurtful. Yeah, I don't
I
agree.
mean, not even that it's hurtful, it's just not factual.
No.
Yeah.
You gotta like the young part.
Yeah, well, I mean, even then, not that young. I mean, maybe the hair.
He's funny.
I mean, I'm like a more femme Seth Rogen is how I would describe myself.
Please get new business cards.
Femme Seth Rogen. Hashtag, yeah, that's going to be my new podcast.
Well, you are part of the Wrong About Everything podcast.
I am.
And you guys do say I'm this, and I would love that to be your new identifier.
You know what? When we record tomorrow, I'm going to be the femme Seth Rogen.
That'll just be a hat tip to me that I'll feel so pleased with.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm going to do it. So
but
yes, I
literally
fight Nazis. Nazis tweeted at me. Can I tell you the most upsetting thing about the Nazis tweeting at me?
Yes.
Is that I know I was supposed to be ignoring it. And speaking of Wrong About Everything, I had Javier and Amy, my co-hosts, Carin, get off Twitter, stop reading it. Those people were my rocks during this.
Because you get really emotional from it. Who wouldn't? But I know you get some.
It
hits you.
Some of it was really upsetting.
Not to give them power.
Yeah, no. But some of it, I don't want to give them power, but I also don't want to downplay how disgusting some of the anti-Semitism is. And how real and just violent it is. I think one of the things that was freaking me out the most was that I would look at some of their Twitter feeds to try to figure out, first of all, I wanted to figure out were any of these people local? And I would read their Twitter feeds and they would be tweeting pictures of Jews in gas chambers, but then 2 days earlier they were tweeting about buying balloons for their kids' birthday parties. And so I began to realize that normal people are Nazis. And I actually had and I'm just going to be really honest and kind of vulnerable. I had a panic attack during that at Target because I was at Target and I was pushing my cart around. And I suddenly realized, and my phone was still ding, 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 getting these Nazi tweets. I was getting 20 of them a minute. And I realized that somebody in the row, the aisle that I'm in at Target, could be tweeting Nazi stuff at me right now, and they don't know it's me, and I don't know it's them, and that literally anybody who lives on my block could secretly want to kill Jews. And to realize that you're surrounded by people for whom the logical conclusion of their ideology is that you should be dead is really upsetting.
Thank you for sharing that. And I have zero interest in denying that thing. Mm. But even someone who thinks that is an okay attack, even if they feel like it's an empty threat, not seeing that comes from a thing that actually does happen.
Right.
That is also monstrous.
Yes.
In a real passive, ignorant kind of place. Mm-hmm. That I don't know if those people understand. And that's...
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's just a bunch of stuff that has all kind of come to a head. A bunch of different threads have all met up. I think there's been anti-Semitism this whole time. I think that there's a space on the internet. I've been reading and listening to. There's an episode of Reply All where they talked about the fact that trolls essentially stole an election. Was it Reply All or was it? No, it was This American Life. And it was about how this was an election that was won by internet trolls. And so I think there's this entire genre of being cruel on the internet that feeds people. And I also think that a lot of those perspectives are being validated by some of the very most powerful people that we have in this country being legitimate anti-Semites. And so it just legitimizes a bunch of stuff that is really scary and violent and prior to now has probably been kept further below the surface.
Well, so you're also a woman?
Oh, you noticed. I am.
I can't help but wonder what role that plays in the immediacy you feel in wanting to act. You fit into yet another group of attacked, underrepresented identity just for existing kind of space. Is that a thing?
So depressing.
That's totally my goal. I'd like you to feel kind of just wrung out.
I'm also very nearsighted.
But I do wonder because of this, I mean, there's a lot of tension around intersectional feminism and intersectionality in general. Even now I'm hearing a lot of like people are sick of the word intersectional, and I don't just mean people who don't want to change and grow, but people who are doing progressive work who are like, this is not helpful. So I'm cognizant of that, and I'm trying to figure out the other ways of talking about it. But I do wonder how you deal with this idea of want to advocate for, you're fighting for a lot of people. Like I know you will stand and fight for Native American folks and Muslim folks and folks who you are aligned with, but who are not. That's not your lived experience.
No, I would say that the only thing that I would change about that is I would fight with them, but probably not for.
Right.
Yeah. Probably not for.
I appreciate that.
Yes, I would root for.
That is small but important word change.
Yes, I would fight with.
Where does the gender struggle fit into the work that you're doing, or how does it, or is there?
I think, and like in the where, and you know, you talked about intersectionality. I think for me, one of the places where that plays out, and then I'll answer your question, is that, you know, when I just said when I'm at Target and I'm thinking about the fact that any one of these people could want me to be dead, you know, my brain doesn't stop there. My brain, I think, relates that to the way that many of my friends who are people of color describe the way that they move through most parts of the world, right? So, like, I think that the way that I experience the stuff with the Nazis or just anti-Semitism in general is that it puts me in a place of fear, but also empathy and understanding with other people who are experiencing hate or oppression, or even just like fear about the people who they're interacting with on a normal daily basis. I think being a woman as an activist is, you know, it's interesting. I mean, first of all, like, let's just say that on the left, there's still a ton of sexism. And
what?
Oh, what? I thought we were a post-sexist society, you know?
Has that been said? Is that a word?
I mean, even in the progressive movement is full of some of the worst guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're so smart and they're so progressive that they're above sexism, right? And above reproach. I think that being a woman, I will flip this around and I will say that I think being a woman gives me more access to relationships. Sometimes with other women, I think that, and I think that it makes a lot of my messages less threatening. I mean, I also think it makes it easier to discredit me. It certainly makes it easier for me to feel physically threatened in situations. And I feel all the effects of sexism, but I also think that some of the most incredible activism is being led but by women and femmes. And I do feel that I have slightly more access to working in partnership with people because I present as this kind of small, physically non-threatening, feminine person.
I think that's really interesting. I view you as a very powerful person. Like, you have the role I see you playing in the communities, and also just the sort of the level of trust of people I trust that give to you.
Thank you.
But I also, like, you seem physically powerful to me. But I think people can read that and then make them discredit that whole idea of there is this huge differential that, like, just the denial of sort of rape culture writ large.
Oh, yeah.
Is easy for people to do because they haven't lived that experience. Like, it's dudes, like cisgender dudes I'm talking about. But also they can see someone like you who's like, yeah, you're small, but you, like, just how you carry yourself is like someone who's not to be fucked with.
Thank you.
Which is amazing, but I think it also is another tool so it can use to go, like, she's fine. What is she talking about?
No, I mean, I hear that too. I think, like, you know, and that's part of, you know, like I was just sharing that I had this panic attack, like, right? Is that, like, I do feel like there is sometimes pressure to make everything seem like it's okay.
Yes.
And I think that doing a lot of that, a lot of the time, can lead people to believe that nothing can touch you, and so therefore the things that hurt you are not really that bad.
Because you seem invulnerable a lot. But I actually know you are getting tweeted at, and it hurts your feelings, and you're scared,
right?
And that's real.
Right, and it's hard because, like, it does scare me, and I'm a person, and also I don't want to give them that power, and so it becomes this thing where you have to present as powerful so that you don't let the Nazis win.
And my strength is in being vulnerable, like me crying and I'm a hero, which is, like, ridiculous.
Damn it, yes. Yes. You took your daughter to the grocery store.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to give you a medal now.
It's so nice to see you show up for basic expectations.
Yes.
But I mean, I get that even as a straight white cisgender dude in social justice spaces. Like, there are plenty of people who just want to be like, what a good guy. And I'm like, I deserve zero reward. Like, I am still mostly just learning how to get out of the way. Yeah. And that becomes heroic. And that, to me, highlights this sort of gross problem that is, like, I don't know, the seedy underbelly of change.
The seedy underbelly
is how many rewards I get for just being willing to say, change is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like,
well, and how easy...
White men have lowered the bar.
Yeah, but also, like, we're talking about, like, discomfort, like how easy it is to walk away when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I get to choose discomfort.
Yeah.
It's never forced on me. I mean, rarely. That is a weird thing. I just like to talk about what good work I'm doing.
Do you choose it?
Trying.
Good for you, Levi.
Damn you. Totally set me up for that.
So anti-Semitism is a tool.
Yes.
Right, okay. And this is one of the things that I know that people who do work like I do are thinking a lot about right now. You know, when I talk about the fact that anti-Semitism has never gone away, it's always been there. It's not just always been there, it's been used as a tool. And so when we talk about why Jews have never fully assimilated, I think part of it is that the American Jewish community has been able to be used as there's a piece written by Yotam Marom where he writes about how anti-Semitism creates a vulnerable buffer group. So people who get the trappings of white privilege, who get to be part of the group, but are still used as a wedge to help maintain the exploitation of people of color. I mean, you see this happen with like redlining and housing in the 60s. You know, I live in North Minneapolis, which was, I don't live in the part of North Minneapolis that was historically Jewish, but North Minneapolis had been, historically Jewish. And then there's this story that we tell about how, the Jews moved away and the black families came. And like, that's not really how that happens, right? And we talk about white flight and we talk about, that Jews all of a sudden had access to suburban living and never did before, which is like this like structural whiteness, right? But the reality is that the Jewish flight was fomented and created by the realtors industry and the mortgage industry, and where you would have realtors convincing Jews that they would not be safe on their block once the black families moved in. And very much relatively easy to prey on people who have only experienced safety recently in this country. And one of the things I'm always working on is how to get, my community to take a real critical look at our role in white flight and our role in disinvesting cities by leaving for the suburbs and taking businesses with us. And the flip side of that is that this is something that, we were manipulated into playing the role that we ultimately played. And it happens at different points in history. It happened in the New York public schools, where anti-Semitism can be used to break the Jews off from other marginalized groups or other oppressed groups and cause us to really focus inward and say, okay, we have to protect ourselves and we need to take care of ourselves right now in a way that can split us off from working in coalition with other people.
And cuts off that collective power.
It cuts off that collective power, which is why, I've been really heartened lately that I see in my community, not just in Jewish social justice, but in Jewish advocacy and Jewish education, that mainstream Jewish groups are saying, we're experiencing anti-Semitism, and what we need to do right now is to work with our partners, work with the Muslim community, work with people of color in the indigenous community, and just continue to form these alliances because anti-Semitism is used as a tool to divide us.
That's that's big. And not something I think most non-Jews think about.
Okay.
I don't know, I don't know if I could speak for all those groups, but that's not something I hear people talk about a lot, even when I'm with other groups of people from sort of underrepresented communities. So it does feel like one of those sort of sneaky tools.
It is.
That people don't even, certainly there are people who know they're using it, and other people don't even know that that's a lever they're pulling on. That it does that push you back inward kind of thing. So do you just have to keep reminding folks?
I think so.
To just don't be manipulated?
Don't be manipulated. And also, look at what our partners are doing. Look at the Muslim community just raised tens of thousands of dollars to fix the cemetery desecration.
It's like 100,000 by now, I think.
Right. Yeah. These are our friends. These are our neighbors. Right. And we are stronger when we work together. But like I said, I'm heartened by the fact that I look around my community and that really seems to be understood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see that and I think, so us non-Muslim, non-Jewish folks need to step up.
You think?
Why are the people who are all being attacked getting each other's back?
That's a really
good question for you.
That's a really good question. No, and that's sometimes my role when I do interfaith work is to talk to my Christian faith partners. I hang out with a whole group of white pastors.
Yeah.
And we have enough of a relationship that I can say to them at this point, look, y'all, I see you're turning out into the streets for other communities, and you're looking to us as other, like, mostly white faith people to show up with you in those endeavors, and we will need you to be nimble enough to then show up and support us when we are under attack.
And that does seem to be a gap.
Yeah, I mean, the American Jewish community has to play a couple of roles here. We have to play a solidarity role, but we also have to triage our own stuff that's going on. Mm-hmm. And so I think what we need is more understanding from our partners that sometimes communities will have to switch hats. And I think that we often find more understanding from our partners that are other marginalized groups.
Yeah, there's a weird tension for folks of, you're helping me, I'm not helping you, which is not what a relationship is.
Right.
That's like hired help. That's a different dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
But folks, if they won't own that that's happening, it's hard to get them to sort of rethink that idea of, I've been showing up for you, you need to show up for me.
Yeah.
And that's not an unfair expectation.
Well, and also, like, are you showing up for me, or are you really showing up for all of us because this is really bad for all of us?
Well, I think there's a deeper critique to, there's a big Christian umbrella in the U.S., and that my understanding of the ideas, the sort of dogmatic ideas, is like it's supposed to be showing up for the sort of most in need among us.
I mean, I wouldn't know because I'm not a Christian.
Yeah, but I believe you've done some of the reading.
Yes.
And that seems like that's even been spun into, I don't know, that's been spun away in some ways.
Well, it's like
praying for wealth as opposed to wellness and community.
Well, and it's also the difference between like social services and social justice. You know, like, and I'm not saying that we don't need social services. Like we need to shelter the homeless. Also, at the same time, we need to work to end homelessness.
Right. And you don't have to pick.
You don't have to pick. You can do both. And I think that sometimes one of them, it's easier to feel good about doing social services, and social justice is hard.
Because it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. Also, well, like, to be real, it takes a really long time, and it's slow.
Incremental change.
It's really, I mean, like, and it's, and you don't always win the first time. You have to try a lot of times before you win. Like, I understand why social justice is not as popular or, like, broadly appealing as social service.
It's like going to the gym. You have to go.
I wouldn't know.
I know, but I'm saying, like, that's a lot of people. Like, you got to go multiple times a week, every week for years and years to get any kind of results.
Yes.
And that is hard to sustain because you get very little reward.
That's true.
But you're trying to make something healthier. Do we have more to do with anti-Semitism? It's a terrible question. Have we dispatched with anti-Semitism?
I think the only other thing that I would say about like the question, like, are Jews white?
Yes, if you
like,
can
just to circle back, just to tie that up. I think, like, obviously the answer is that no, not all Jews are white. Mm-hmm. And also, like, again, what does white mean and how is it useful? And when you say are Jews white, like, what is your angle on that? The one thing that I will say is that buried in that question is like I said, when there's this Ashkenazi ideal of what American Jews look like. And I think that when we spend a lot of time talking about whether Jews are white, what we're doing is we're fundamentally erasing the Jews in our community who are not white. I mean, who are literally not white people. And so when we do this, like the whole, like there's like I said, there's a book, there's a field of study, How Jews Became White. I have a great friend who works down the street from here who is a black Jew, and she, and we did a training together, and she held up the book and she's just like, still not white, Like, so I think that when we talk about are Jews white, when we essentialize Jewishness to whiteness, what we're doing is we're completely erasing the real story of the American Jewish community, which is multiracial and multicultural. And we're also erasing, like, the really outstanding work that many Jews of color are doing to raise their own leadership and to push the Jewish community to have transformative conversations about who is in our community.
It also feels like that same anti-Semitism lever of pulling you into whiteness, but also pushing you out and singling you out to make sure that this is this nice buffer between white and not white.
Yeah.
So just like the moat of Jews in there to keep out anything further away.
Yeah. And I think, like, the question, like, who is a Jew and what does it mean? I think there's a lot of people in our community who don't look like what everybody's thinking of when you say Jew. And so I think that...
Like a femme Seth Rogen.
A femme Seth Rogen. Yeah, pretty much. Yes.
Well, I wonder if we just spend a couple of minutes talking about, it's important to be in discomfort and to live in discomfort when you're doing social justice work, and I think when you're doing personal growth too. Like,
my leg is asleep right now.
That's part of it. You're resting. But I wonder how you take care of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about this last night because I was, I'm on leave right now from work for a few weeks, and I'm like taking this leave so that I can like rest and restore and reflect and do all of that stuff. But I took my son to Hebrew school, and as I sat there in the library waiting at Hebrew school, a whole bunch of people wanted to talk to me about work stuff, and I can't. Like, I don't know how to say no to that. I don't know how, because I do work that's in my community and that I bring my full self to, it's hard for me to show up as myself in other spaces and not have it be work. Having times where I am just present with my family, where I'm either just with them or like, I can walk around like a mall with my family and nobody like wants to talk to me about like anti-Semitism. So there's like,
hooray.
But I mean like creating times where I can almost be invisible. I don't know if that's not a very uplifting answer.
No, I think that.
Yeah, and having
it's real.
Yeah, and I have stuff that I do that's not about this. I mean, like I have, I was just talking to, Ashley Fairbanks pretty well. Yeah, we were just talking the other day about having to have friends who are outside of movement work. And I have friends that are outside of movement work. I have like a whole little group of like ex-punks who have kids that I hang out with who are not in movement work. And the reality is that some of this stuff is fun, even when it's hard. I think when you're doing work, you talked about how challenging it is because, you're in relationships with people and then you need to be vulnerable, but then you need to worry about liking. I mean, all of that is real, but I think that one of the things that the left should be doing more of is having fun. I think there are opportunities to do important, serious work, but enjoy the people that you're with while you're doing it. I know I experienced that an awful lot of the time. Even on election night, that was really, really, really bad. And I was with my friends.
That's great. So where can people connect with you if they don't want to send hate speech? Like where? That's not what this is.
I don't think that your listeners send hate speech.
I hope not.
So you can connect with me. I'm the executive director of Jewish Community Action, and you can find us on Facebook or our website, jewishcommunityaction.org. You can find me on Twitter at Mrotzie, Mrotzie, and you can listen to my podcast, which is Wrong About Everything. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher and everywhere you can find podcasts.
It's a great podcast.
Thank you. Or we're at wrongabouteverythingpodcast.com, and you can probably find me at the mall.
Well, Carin, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you for having me.
Season 2 of Not About You would not be possible without the generous support of Walker West Music Academy in St. Paul. Walker West provides music education to any student who wants to learn, offering a variety of lessons for all ages and all skill levels. Go to walkerwest.org for more information. I wouldn't be able to make Not About You without the deep learning and guidance of folks I've met through my time in the Sustainable Progress Through Engaging Active Citizens program, or SPEAK, based out of Hope Community in Minneapolis. Go to hope-community.org to check out all the amazing work being done at Hope Community. Support them if you've got the resources to do so. Season 2 of Not About You would absolutely not be possible without all the amazing folks who agreed to be guests and share their valuable time and considerable experience with me. So go seek out their work and find ways to support them. And of course, this show only really has meaning if you listen and share. So thanks for listening. Now go share. Tell someone about the show. Share it on social media with the hashtag NAPOD. Post an iTunes review. Please post an iTunes review. Help me get these conversations out to more folks. The Not About You theme song is Rebels of Our Own Kind by Charlie Van Stee, used with permission from Charlie.